When we started that show, we had no point of view, except we'd like to be relevant, and that was it, and have control.
Before diving into the analysis, let's pause and reflect on how rare it is for a comedy series from the late 1960s to reveal an unfiltered moment. No edits, no retakes, just pure improv gold. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour was celebrated not only for its wit and musical flair, but also for its unpredictability. It managed to strike a bold balance between scripted routines and on-the-fly spontaneity, a balancing act that gave rise to some unforgettable moments. Now, there's one particular clip circulating that has fans scratching their heads. Was this truly live and uncut? Or is there more than meets the eye? Let's walk through every nuance, break down each reaction, and determine why this moment stands out in television blooper lore. In the late 1960s, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour emerged as one of television's most daring and influential programs. At a time when the airwaves were tightly controlled and most shows avoided controversial material, Tom and Dick Smothers leaned in. They didn't just present comedy. They challenged political norms, poked at the establishment, and highlighted the cultural rift between the younger generation and the older status quo. Their sketches and monologues questioned the Vietnam War, civil rights issues, and censorship itself, right in prime time. This wasn't a fringe show. It aired on CBS, one of the major networks, making its rebellious tone all the more radical. Television had never quite seen anything like it. The Smothers Brothers used humor not just to entertain, but to provoke thought and, at times, outrage. Their guest list included edgy comedians and politically charged musicians like Pete Seeger and Joan Baez, names that network executives often viewed with suspicion. It was comedy infused with purpose, and each episode seemed to walk the fine line between what the audience loved and what the censors would tolerate. The show's refusal to self-censor, even in the face of pushback, made it both legendary and short-lived. CBS's decision to abruptly cancel the show in 1969 didn't just mark the end of a TV series, it signaled how fraught the relationship was between entertainment, politics, and control during a turbulent era in American life. All of this unfolded in a production environment that was much more limited than today's polished digital workflows. In the 1960s, editing video content wasn't a clean, computer-based process. Footage was captured on videotape, and any post-production edits required physically cutting and splicing that tape by hand. Editors used razors and glue, working on massive machines with mechanical precision. Mistakes couldn't simply be scrubbed out with a click. They had to be removed with time, effort, and often expensive re-recording sessions. In many cases, switching between camera angles had to be done live, with a director calling shots from a control booth using a switcher during the taping. If a wrong camera was selected or a line flubbed, it often ended up on the master recording. Live-to-tape became a popular method for variety shows, offering a balance between the energy of live performance and the opportunity for limited corrections. But time was always tight. Deadlines loomed, and on a show as chaotic and creatively experimental as the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, there wasn't always room or desire to fix every imperfection. Sometimes those imperfections were embraced. A technical glitch or a flubbed line could be funny, humanizing, and strangely in tune with the show's rebellious spirit. The team behind the show seemed to understand that part of their appeal was their unpredictability. Whether a moment made it to air by oversight or by design, the audience often couldn't tell. And that only added to the show's mystique. When we see a clip from the show today that appears to be unedited, maybe a blooper, maybe a moment of unexpected honesty, it carries a particular weight. It's not just a funny mistake, it's a window into how live television operated under pressure, and how the Smothers Brothers used that immediacy to their advantage. In an era when most TV was carefully sanitized, these moments revealed the seams, the spontaneity, and the push and pull between creativity and control. So when a seemingly raw moment surfaces, something that didn't get cleaned up or censored, it feels like more than just a blooper reel. It's a trace of a larger cultural battle, one fought in sketch comedy, musical acts, and late-night editing rooms. And for fans of the show or students of television history, these brief flashes of authenticity help us understand how groundbreaking, risky, and subversively brilliant the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour really was. The clip in question begins during a musical performance, a staple of the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. Tom and Dick are center stage, performing a familiar folk tune. Tom has his acoustic guitar in hand, fingers positioned for the next chord. Dick stands by the mic, poised to sing. Everything seems routine, until it isn't. Mid-song, Tom suddenly stops strumming. There's no audible cue or glitch from the audio system. The band freezes. What follows is pure, unscripted tension. Tom's hand hovers uncertainly above the guitar strings, his face locked in an expression that seems to ask, "What just happened?" The camera, likely reacting to the sudden silence, cuts close to Tom's face. He looks genuinely startled, eyes darting subtly to his brother. The two share a wordless beat of confusion, a kind of private dialogue only siblings could have on live television. Dick's eyebrows lift slightly, lips curling into a half-smile as if trying to decide whether to laugh or step in. For a moment, it's as if time slows. Tom leans in just enough to say something under his breath, too quiet for the mic to pick up. No one in the audience hears the words, but they catch the beat. It's uncomfortable, strange, and oddly funny. Moments later, the band jumps back in. Tom re-enters, but not smoothly. The chord is slightly off, jangling just enough to catch the ear. The audience gives a low murmur, as if sensing something unscripted just happened. But no one calls it out. The segment rolls forward without acknowledgement. The moment is over, but it leaves behind a lingering sense of something real. A disruption in the controlled atmosphere of television performance. What makes this so compelling is that online producers and commentators claim this clip was never edited. They argue there's no overdubbing, no reshoot, and no studio patching. And visually, the footage seems to support that. In the timeline of the clip, there's no visible jump cut. The camera work flows naturally. The audio remains consistent, and no sudden changes in lighting or set continuity are apparent. But more than the technical evidence, it's the human cues that make this feel like a genuine blooper. Tom's facial expressions are a masterclass in unconscious reaction. The slight furrow of his brow, the quick purse of his lips, and the brief drop of his shoulders all indicate a spontaneous emotional response. That shoulder shift, a telltale sign of tension release, doesn't show up in rehearsed performances. It's subtle, maybe only an inch, but in body language terms, it reveals discomfort or surprise, something not likely to be choreographed. Dick's response reinforces this interpretation. His face reads as someone caught between concern and amusement. His head tilts, his mouth parts slightly, and his gaze bounces between Tom and the band. That micro-movement of scanning the stage is a real-time check-in, a kind of, "Is everything okay?" reflex that happens too quickly and too precisely to be rehearsed. If this had been staged, his reaction would probably have been larger, played for laughs, with a knowing wink to the audience or an exaggerated facial twist. Instead, it's muted, uncertain, and incredibly human. Even the band members get pulled into the authenticity of the moment. Watch closely, and you'll see their eyes flick toward each other, looking for someone to take the lead. Their restart is a little off. Not chaotic, but just hesitant enough to betray a lack of preparation. In live variety shows, musicians are trained to maintain tempo, and recover smoothly from disruptions. Here, though, they look momentarily unsure, as if the instructions weren't clear. That's not the polished response of a pre-planned gag. It's the collective processing of a team dealing with a genuine curveball. What unfolds in this brief clip is something rare, especially for a show that walked such a tightrope between performance and provocation. In a landscape where everything on television was scripted, reviewed, and rehearsed, this unscripted moment shines. It's a hiccup in the machinery, a crack in the surface that lets the audience see behind the curtain. It doesn't just amuse, it connects. The sudden interruption in the musical performance raises an obvious question. Was it a technical glitch or a genuine mistake? If it had been a tape malfunction or a studio feed dropout, there would likely be telltale signs, an abrupt jump cut in the video, a flicker or blackout on screen, or a stutter in the audio. But none of those indicators are present here. The footage remains smooth. The camera doesn't change angles unnaturally. The audio stays uninterrupted, even during the silence when the music halts. The microphones continue to pick up ambient noise, the gentle hum of the room, and the subtle movements of the performers. That consistent fidelity suggests that nothing was inserted or re-edited to cover a problem. There's also no laugh track added to smooth over the moment, something that was standard practice at the time to mask awkward silences or misfires. In this instance, what you hear is raw, unsweetened audio. There's a notable absence of studio interference. After Tom misses the chord and the song stutters to a stop, there's a pause where you can hear the room breathe. Then, the band gently picks back up, not with a polished cue, but with the kind of hesitant restart that only happens when everyone's feeling their way back together. It's not sharp. It's not rehearsed. It's real. If this had been a true technical mishap, the producers likely would have cut to a different camera, inserted a wide crowd shot, or even dropped to commercial. That was standard operating procedure on live or taped variety shows to smooth over anything unsalvageable. But instead, the camera stays with the performers. There's no bailout. That choice, to remain with the awkwardness, indicates that the production either didn't perceive the mistake as fatal or made an intentional decision to let it play out. It reflects a philosophy that trusted the performers and the audience to navigate the moment honestly. Audio engineers at the time used various tools to guide live production. Click tracks for timing, whisper cues from directors, and metronome feeds piped to musicians via earpieces. But in this segment, none of that is audible. There's no detectable count-in, no off-stage voice directing a cut, and no high-frequency tick marking time. That silence, ironically, speaks volumes. It strongly suggests that there were no behind-the-scenes prompts nudging the performers back on track. Everyone on stage appears to be reacting in real time, looking for each other's visual cues rather than relying on external guidance. The reactions from the audience further reinforce the authenticity. Instead of a uniform burst of laughter or applause that you might expect from a canned sound effect, there's a gradual swell of chuckles. Hesitant, slightly confused, even sympathetic. When Tom resumes the song, the applause is soft and scattered, building naturally rather than hitting all at once like a cue card prompted the audience. The sound of human uncertainty is hard to fake, and here it's fully present. The audience aren't being told what to feel. They're responding organically to what just unfolded. Even the background details lend support to the idea that this was a real mistake left untouched. You can hear subtle mic shifts, the rustle of clothing, and the creak of a guitar strap, all signs of live, unprocessed audio. There's no evidence of reverb added in post-production or audio ducking to hide background noise. These imperfections act as sonic fingerprints, pointing to a moment captured as it truly happened. All of this makes the scene more than just a funny interruption. It's a moment of honesty within a medium that often prides itself on polish. The fact that the production allowed this beat to stay intact, without edits or distractions, reflects a deeper trust in the audience's ability to appreciate authenticity. Whether by accident or subtle intention, the decision to leave the moment unaltered elevates it from simple blooper to a rare slice of live television vulnerability, an artifact from an era when not everything could be cleaned up in post. Among the many legendary moments from the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, documented bloopers tend to share a common rhythm. They're loud, chaotic, and often hilarious in an overt way. In rehearsed or even semi-rehearsed outtakes, Tom or Dick might visibly lose it, breaking character with a sharp laugh, doubling over, sometimes even halting the scene entirely. These moments are usually accompanied by a break in production flow, a sudden cut to a backstage camera, a crane dolly sliding off stage, or a disembodied director's voice stepping in. One of the best-known examples involves Dick mispronouncing a word, which sends Tom into a laughing fit so intense they abandon the take altogether. That blooper never aired live, it was recorded during rehearsal, and the dolly shot pulling away signals a clean end to the segment. That kind of structured chaos feels miles apart from what we see in this clip. Here, the energy is different. There's no punchline, no exaggerated crack-up, no cue that signals to the audience, "This is a joke." Instead, the tension feels authentic, more like a performer momentarily thrown off, rather than a duo executing a well-timed comedic stumble. Tom's facial expression, restrained and puzzled, isn't played big for laughs. Dick doesn't break out into laughter or deliver a recovery line. They keep the segment alive, keep it moving, and most notably, the technical production never flinches. The camera work remains steady, without a jarring cut or studio intervention. That continuity is striking and unusual compared to the way bloopers typically resolve. The strength of this moment lies in its subtlety, and that's exactly what has viewers captivated. Online, the clip has found new life. Fan forums are flooded with frame-by-frame dissections. One fan writes, "It's so obvious Tom got lost mid-lyrics. You can almost feel the confusion radiating." Others echo that feeling. There's a collective sense among longtime viewers that this is something rare. Not because it's the funniest thing ever aired, but because it feels like television forgot to be television for a few seconds. On social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram, the clip has gone viral. Dozens of fan accounts have reposted it with captions like, "This is what real TV looks like," and "unfiltered 60s gold." Commenters describe it as raw and unscripted. They're not watching it for nostalgia alone. They're responding to the human moment at the center of it. The audience isn't laughing at a joke. They're watching someone recover from a mistake in real time, with all the grace and awkwardness that entails. Still, not everyone is convinced. A few contrarians suggest the moment might have been deliberately staged, an early version of viral content engineered for modern rediscovery. Their case? The camera angle is too clean, the timing too perfect, and the reaction too smooth to be unplanned. They argue that the Smothers Brothers, always a step ahead, might have baked in this kind of authentic mistake to give future generations a taste of raw performance. But that interpretation tends to overlook a key fact. 1960s television crews were highly trained in live production. They were used to switching cameras on a dime, reading the room, and adapting without breaking the visual flow. Technical polish doesn't prove intent. It just proves competence. What tips the scale for most viewers is the absence of classic production cues that would normally signal a joke. There's no wink to the audience, no reset line, no trailing laugh from Tom or Dick to let us off the hook. Instead, the moment just happens. It's uncomfortable. Then it resolves, and the show rolls on. That kind of unresolved moment wasn't typical for comedy variety shows, where timing and payoff were everything. Which is why this clip feels more authentic than any blooper intentionally played for laughs. It isn't a joke with a punchline, it's a moment with no safety net. And that's exactly why it continues to resonate. Experts remind us of how the era operated. Media historians point out that shows like this often prioritized spontaneity. In interviews published decades later, crew members recalled that the Smothers brothers loved in-the-moment risks. One former stage manager said they wanted to keep it feeling fresh. That meant letting go of perfect takes. Meanwhile, technical directors who worked on live-to-tape broadcasts confirmed that missing flubs were common in tightly scheduled productions. There simply wasn't enough time or budget to fix every minor glitch. When timelines demanded next-day broadcasts, even small errors were overlooked, if they didn't threaten narrative or runtime. A respected TV archivist has this to say, "Yes, some moments survive unedited." This is precisely what makes live comedy visceral and alluring. Their assessment aligns with how the clip feels, a spontaneous transmission across 50-plus years. If this moment caught you off guard, consider sharing it with friends who appreciate the unexpected magic of early TV. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did you feel that split-second tension? Did Tom's look unnerve you, or did it charm you? And if you're curious about more hidden moments, vintage TV gems, or the behind-the-scenes of classic shows, stay tuned. There's so much more to uncover in the archive. Smash that like button if you enjoyed this analysis, and hit subscribe to join the nostalgia adventure. You won't want to miss what we dig up next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the reels of yesteryear.